Hello and welcome to the World-Stuction podcast. I'm your host, Alex.
And I am your co-host, Levi.
And today we're talking about maps, map drawings, and all those mappy accessories. The world that we'll be using today is the world that we did in our episode 0 podcast when we were just starting, when we were just wee babies. Would be that IceBomb world. And for simplicity's sake, we haven't thought of a name of it yet.
Well, that's not true. It's IceBomia, remember?
Oh yeah, that's right. Welcome to IceBomia. We'll just be calling this IceBomia until we get to something more concrete. So what we did here is that we used Worldographer's randomly generated tiles. And then after that, we cleaned up those tiles in order to make it look more socially acceptable, like more like a continent instead of a computer randomly placed some dots. And you probably, if my editing is correct, should be seeing that now. Well, now we're working on the details. We got the general shape of the continent. None of these tiles here, like the forests or the mountains, none of these are going to be permanent. Think of these as just kind of blank spaces in which we will fill in later.
Yeah. You know, a lot of things can change. We might change how many land masses there are. We could remove some of the sea. Is this ocean or sea? Well, there you go. That's another thing that could change, is depending on whether it's going to be an ocean or a sea, or, you know, exactly what is the scale of this.
I believe that this would be a sea.
Yeah, I think something you said earlier where this would be like
similar to like the Mediterranean Isles.
Right, yeah.
Like just in that, you know, in that Greece, Egypt-y area where there's just a bunch of islands and it all kind of like, there's like the Red Sea and all those other.
Right. Because I was telling you that each hex is supposed to be a day's worth of travel, but that doesn't have to be true. You can make it whatever you want.
Right.
You know? So if we were scaling down, we could say each hex is half a day of travel.
Or if we're really scaling it down, we can say each one is a mile.
Yep. Yeah, that is true.
And this would be very small.
Yes. But it would.
In that previous episode, we were talking about designing kind of like this European area. And so this is, until we get like a concrete measurement, just approximately the size of Europe.
Yeah, I think that's a good kind of frame of reference, is just about the size of continental Europe, right?
Correct.
So do you think we should maybe go over some of the rules for what we're going to add and why?
Nope. I think we're going to march ahead and ignore our audience and just do what we want. No, okay. All right, fine. I guess we'll talk about some of the rules. So, Levi, you're the resident map maker. I know, because me personally, whenever I'm doing adventures or writing or whatever, I don't necessarily like to draw a map. I just like to place ideas, and then whether or not it's advantageous for them to be there is what it is. But I know
that's a style. There is no correct way to do it. It works. It's a little more loosey-goosey than I like.
Well, yeah, you are a hard and fast map lover. So go ahead to tell us what are some things that we should think about.
Well, the first thing, with all of these rules, you have to remember that they are generally speaking. In whatever you're building, you can make exceptions, and there are always exceptions to these rules. So, you know, don't take any of these as hard fact that you can't do. If you are going to break them or bend them or stretch them, you should know they exist. That way you have a reason for why they're being broken, bent, or stretched.
Right. You should never defy the laws of physics on accident.
Yeah. So one of the most common errors that people make when they're first like making fantasy maps or just maps in general is that they'll split rivers. And that is, rivers don't split because they flow at the lowest point. And that's not to say they never split. A river may split, but a cartographer would never draw that on a map because one of those ways is eventually going to dry out because the water will erode and just continue down the lowest point.
Okay.
And do you want to go back and forth on these rules, or do you just want me to list?
Yeah, you're kind of teaching me, man. I don't really know any of these rules. Like I said, I don't really use them. What I kind of do is I just draw a circle. I'm like, okay, this is here, and I'll draw like separate ideas. If I need the players or characters to go to that area, I'll just say it's near them. All my locations are to my convenience.
Gotcha. Whatever's easier for you.
That's right. So, if anything, I just kind of have a list of locations and like the attributes of those locations, but I have no idea on where those locations are physically at until I've specifically said so.
Yeah, so you probably haven't done as much research into this kind of stuff. Sticking to the theme of water, another important thing about like lakes is that lakes will usually have only one river that it will drain from, if it even has a river that it drains from.
Okay.
So a lake might have multiple rivers feeding into it, but usually there will only be one that drains out of it.
What do you mean by it doesn't always need a river to drain from?
Well, some lakes, the water they get is the same amount they lose, if that makes sense.
From evaporation?
Either through, yeah, from evaporation.
Or just
Um,
one big guy just drinking it all?
yeah, exactly. There you go. Maybe there's just, you have some sort of monster that's at the bottom of the lake that's just consuming all of the water and all the rivers just flow into it. But then again, then you would have to think, well, what's the monster doing with that water? That has to go somewhere.
Well, I think before we continue down this list, we talked about some rivers. I've been generating this giant blank space.
Yes, I've been slowly watching you do this. You're very slow at it.
I'm meticulous.
Okay, sorry, meticulous.
So I've been slowly creating this blank space. So we were talking about rivers and lakes and stuff like that. Let's put down either a river or a lake.
All right. The thing about rivers
Okay.
is they need a place to come from.
Okay.
The most common source of a river is from the melting of ice from a mountain. We have to do mountains first.
Okay. All right.
Well, we don't have to. You could do. Is it coming from an underground cavern or whatever?
So like this area just like has underground caverns. That's
yeah, maybe this has like a whole bunch, a whole huge underground system in it.
Are you familiar with kind of like the Underdark from D&D?
Yes.
Where it's just kind of that underground entire upside down world. Maybe there could be like a kind of a smaller Underdark here. Who knows?
Like a huge just cavern system, naturally occurring or maybe unnaturally. I don't know. Maybe whoever lives there built all of these.
I have an idea. We talked about the possibility of, since this was the magical epicenter here, since that was frozen over, now there's fissures that have opened up.
Yes.
What if this is a new river that is flowing from a fissure?
Oh, that would make it a huge river, right? Because this is like a source of magical energy.
Right, and it's coming from like the earth itself.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
All right. All I have.
And there we go. We were technically breaking one of the rules, but we have a good reason because this river is coming from some magical source.
That's right.
So it's not coming from the, the ice of mountains or an underground cavern. Instead, it's coming from some magical source.
That's right.
What are you looking for? Just
I'm trying to make some fissure. How big do we want it?
I think you just mark the hex that it's on, right?
All right. So we'll use this Underdark solid to signify the fissures. All right. So that doesn't mean that this entire day's travel is just one giant gaping hole in the earth. It might be true, but I don't think that's the direction that we're going for. But that's
it's the same like when you place a city or a town. That city or town isn't going to sprawl the entire hex, but it's a point of major interest that you want to mark.
That's
on
right.
The map.
So we're going to use that to signify. Wait, hold on. Underdark broken. That looks cooler. Okay, we're using Underdark broken in order to signify our fissures.
I think you have more fun just playing around with the graphics.
I like pictures.
Which one of those colors of blue do you want?
I don't know. It's a tough choice. Which one of these really screams river?
Well, maybe the one that says river, unless none of those say river.
None of them say river. I got water ocean, water shoals, water sea deep, and water sea, and water reef, and ocean deep.
I'd use water shoals.
All right, water shoals.
It's a light blue.
So how is this river going to sprawl?
You should make it snake.
Okay.
Yeah, rivers aren't usually just straight shots. They hit things and they kind of curve around. They flow to the path of least resistance.
So something like that?
Yeah, that looks good. You know what I would do, though?
What?
Maybe move that point of the fissure up and make it where this river kind of splits that continent in half.
Oh. That's not to say that there isn't like anything above this.
No, not at all.
We just don't
But
know what
I
it
think
is.
we might actually add stuff that makes it where it's hard to go off the map. So maybe we'll have mountains or something like that sprawling across. And essentially, what happened here is there was one big country, but because of this magical fissure that made this huge lake just appear, and I'd make it wider, you know, make
Wider?
it where it's, yeah, you want to make it where this is like really hard to cross. And now you have like a point of conflict,
Okay.
you know. Why are you changing it to the darker
I
blue?
like darker blue.
Right, but the ocean is dark blue.
Yeah, but it isn't this type of blue.
Okay, that's fair.
These squares, for our intensive purposes, are describing a day's worth of travel. If we put another tile next to it, that means that this is like at least a 1 day travel river to travel across.
So are we going to use for these purposes that kind of logic that each of these hexes are a day? Because I know we were saying at the beginning that they can mean different things.
I think
So,
for our intensive purposes, I think trying to figure out like locations and stuff like that, I think that might be important for us.
okay. I say still make it too wide because again, this is a magical river.
All right, then
So yeah.
I'm making the fissure even bigger,
Oh yeah, go ahead.
something like that.
Or if you want to get really crazy, you could make it where that fissure kind of spans most of the top section of that map.
What, something like that?
I'm saying go all the way to the, bring it all the way over. Yeah, like that. I don't know if this is what you want to go. But that would
That's a
be,
real deep cut.
yeah. But I mean, that's the kind of things that happens when you blow up a source of insane magical energy.
And so I know we talked about like maybe the world's not doesn't even know this is happening, but if this thing's making cuts like that, that's a big change.
I think that because of how close this is to the epicenter, they probably would know that something is happening, and they would be, besides the ice, the people living on that ice continent would be the ones most directly affected. I think the people who don't really know what's happening are like people on the other side of it, or
Okay.
maybe the effects haven't reached them yet.
What if
Or maybe, there's another focal point of nature there. So, and so now you have like, we haven't quite said what's gonna be here, but if there had been one massive country, now that country's kind of fucked
right?
because they're split in half. So maybe there at one point was one country here, but now just because of how almost impossible it is,
Yeah, just
to
the
keep,
fact of crossing this river right here. What if
yeah,
so, nature tends to grow from rivers, but I know this river is supposedly new. Uh, would I be wrong to put some trees next to the river?
you would not be wrong. No.
I would not be wrong. How dense of trees are we talking?
How long ago did we say this?
I'm thinking 5 to 10 years.
How insane, again, asking this question, how insane do you want to get? Do you want to say that this river that is magical in nature is feeding these trees that used to be normal trees, now no longer normal trees?
Let's do it.
Now there's essentially a magical forest.
Let's enchant the forest. What if there was like a town that was somewhere near it? Like definitely like villages near.
Dude, if you look at where that river is, that's where quite possibly there could have been a capital. Because port cities are usually built on inland coves that protect them from storms and stuff like that. So that area.
Oh
So
my
if you
God.
wanted to be, cruel to these people, you could have said that the capital city was right where that river now.
I'm a cruel, fickle deity. We're putting the capital here, and it's called the drowned kingdom.
Perfect. And I would think now that essentially this country is split into half into two different factions. And of course, there maybe was underlying politics for why they split like this too, other than just the geographical and the fall of their capital. But that all comes later. We don't care about any of that yet. Right now, we're just adding cool geographical features for us to.
Right.
But it does get your juices flowing.
My juices are flowing everywhere.
That's gross.
All right.
I want you to know that if you count that, that's 1, 2.
Oh.
That's like 20 days of travel. If you start at the beginning of that river and flow all the way down,
Yeah, that's a big river.
That's a big river.
All right. I'm not finding the castle markers right now. So I'll just throw down something there and we'll remember that for later. Here,
Yeah, one of those.
we'll do this. This one here for the remember for later tile. All right.
Perfect.
Okay. Now we can move on. So we got the river. We got the mama of all rivers, my man.
Yeah, that's almost as big as the Amazon.
I guess that's true, yeah. But I don't think is the Amazon. The Amazon's not that wide. This is a really wide river.
I actually don't know how wide the Amazon is off the top of my head, but yeah, I don't think it would be that wide. Maybe at certain parts, it would be. No, I don't think it would ever be as wide as like you would have to. It take 8 hours to cross. Other than the fact that it's flowing really fast, and it'd be hard to get across. Yeah. This is a pretty wide river,
That's right.
especially at its widest point. It's 4 days of travel across.
Yeah, right here.
I was thinking the diagonal 4 days, but yeah, that works too.
Oh, hold on. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days right here.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
That's like ocean level.
Honestly, that almost is just like a giant lake. But it
It
flows.
It
down.
flows.
Are there any strange properties to this river that we need to come up with other than making a magical forest around it?
I like to imagine that the current is very inconsistent.
So sometimes you might come across it and think, "Wow, this is a lake," and then other sections, it's just
Like I imagine like there's kind of like rip tides underneath that'll just like pop up and like scoop someone, send them down the way down the river.
If certain sections of it flowed differently than other sections to that point where like one part was almost sedentary and then the other flew really fast,
Mm-hmm.
you would get a part where maybe part of the river would dry out and people could walk across. But then 2 hours later, all of a sudden, you're walking across and then you just see this giant wall of water. And there's nowhere for you to go because you walked 3 hours in and you still have another 4 to go.
Jesus Christ. This river is a killer.
Oh, yeah.
All
But
right.
probably so is the forest around.
Oh yeah, let's start placing some forest. Let's see
You should
here.
do those palm beach.
Those palm beaches.
Yeah, well, they have like a little palm tree tiles. Those
Yeah.
are perfect.
Let's do some swamplands, I guess. This right here would probably be a swampland. I'm thinking all the areas where it kind of does like this sea around land, that'd probably be real swampy, right?
Not necessarily, but yeah. I mean, we could. There's no reason.
What do you mean not necessarily?
Well, you could still have forest terrain there because, again, water flows at the lowest point. It's not going to seep. Well, it's a magical water. It can do whatever.
All right. Instead of a lot of swamps, then we'll just put one swamp.
You could do something really weird and do all kinds of different terrain coming off of this river.
That would be cool.
That would, but you also have to remember we do have other fissures that are gonna.
Yeah, let's not pour all of our creative juices into this one fissure.
Right.
I'm just gonna throw down one swamp and then do some tree lands and then call it good.
Well, we could do the different terrain idea, but just make them small. There are all kinds of different terrain that come off this river, which is weird and unusual, but they're fairly small.
I just saw marshes and I immediately thought of the Black Marshes.
Oh, from Skyrim?
Or from Lord of the Rings.
Black Marshes from the Lord of the Rings?
Yeah, when they walked through and they saw all those faces.
Oh. Whenever I saw that scene back when I was a kid, that freaked me out.
Oh yeah.
It was that scene and the fight with Spider, Shelob, or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, those used to freak me out.
Giant spiders are scary, all right? I don't care how much of a man you are. If you see a giant man-eating spider, you're gonna flip out, So I'm putting the marshes. Would marshes go closest to the river, or which one is closer, swamps or marshes?
The difference between swamp and marshes, I'm pretty sure, is actually just like the temperature It has nothing to do with how wet it is. Like,
Okay.
marshes are typically like, I think
We'll just make
that's
this
just a guess.
swamplands. These are all
Okay.
swamplands.
Or maybe a marsh is more flooded than a swamp. I don't know.
I'll place some more
Yeah.
forests and you look it up.
Okay. A marsh is defined as having no woody plants. So they'd be like grasses, reeds, sedges,
All right. So
and
I
they're not
imagine.
as deep as swamps. A swamp is a place where the area would be covered in water and would primarily have like trees growing.
All right. Then I'm going to do the swamp here and then the marshes surrounding the swamp.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah. In a nutshell, marshes are nutrient-rich wetlands that support a variety of reeds and grasses. Swamps are defined by their ability to support woody plants and trees. Bogs are characterized by their poor soil and high peat content.
hmm.
So there you go. Even bogs are technically so.
So this is an educational podcast.
There you go, dropping knowledge bombs all the time.
That's right.
Make those forests wider. What are you doing?
How much of this land is forest?
I mean,
Is that good?
magical water.
Is
Yeah, that's good.
is this good enough for you?
Look, magical water, my son.
Okay. Okay. We got you. I'm going to make more marshes.
What's your obsession with marshes?
I told you, the Lord of the Rings movie. I liked it.
Okay.
And then more swamps. Yeah.
So is this fissure going to be causing any other things? Or would that be...
Ooh.
Or any other geographical features we should pop down from this specific fissure?
From this one specifically?
Yeah, or should we maybe move on?
Let's
Maybe
move
come back
on.
to this later.
I'm bored of this
Yeah.
section of the map.
Let's place. I want to place mountains somewhere. So let's find an area where we
All
think
right.
mountains should
How
go.
about here?
Yeah. Okay, we can do some mountains here.
All right. I'm gonna start blanking up some of this area. Talk to me about mountains. What do I need to know about mountains before we start digging into them?
Well, there are two basic rules that you kind of have to keep in mind with mountains. One, there usually isn't just one giant mountain. Usually, mountain ranges are what form. And then two, wherever you have a mountain range, one side would be, the rain shadow effect takes place, which maybe you probably should know of from third grade science class. But just in case you got kicked out, essentially one side of the mountain would be drier than the other because all the clouds and storms would hit one side, kind of bunch up, condense, drop their water vapor. That would lighten them up. They'd go over. They'd have no more water to drop.
Okay.
That is a childlike explanation of the rain shadow effect, and that is why I am not a teacher.
I think I'm just about done blanking up this area. So
All right.
what's the deal here, man? We making a fissure here. We making some mountains. What am I placing down? What am I dropping?
I think we should do a mountain range.
Okay.
And I think we should do that mountain range. There are two ways I'm thinking we could either do one diagonally that crosses through. It's kind of hard to explain to you, but if you did it like through the where the ice continent is, all the way down to where the continent is. Does that make sense? Through that little landway they have, not that far.
Tell me when.
Right
here.
Keep on going to the right.
Right.
Yeah, like maybe start there and go all the way diagonally down through that little land archway through both the continents.
Something like this?
Yeah, so, and I mean, we could do that, or the other thing we could do is have one that's almost like a naturally occurring fortification and just have it block off that landmass. If you were looking at like plate tectonics, maybe these are two plate tectonics that are pushing together and creating a sort of mountain range right like that. And you probably want to get rid of few of those ones in the middle.
Okay.
Have that giant mountain range like you did.
Okay.
But
Something.
you might want to make a few spots that, yeah, maybe even less than that. You want like a narrow passageway because that creates conflict because those, whatever two countries are there, would be warring over that piece of land
Maybe
really
this is
bad.
home to the fabled evil dude.
Exactly. Yeah. And
Maybe.
maybe that's why they had so much conflict
Right.
because they're the only two countries that are actually have land touching.
I mean, all these areas have the potential for conflict, just because the in the grand scheme of things, they're not that far away from each other.
Right, that is true. But they would be a lot more naval based conflict.
Correct.
This would be probably a lot more land based conflict and fighting over that plot of land.
Correct. All right.
Like whoever controls that mountain pass holds a lot of power.
Well, because this is supposed to be the magical epicenter somewhere in here, in this
Yeah.
giant icy area.
Yeah.
All right. So we got the mountain range. What can we do
Now,
because we have the mountain range?
well, looking at that, I honestly don't know what would, happen from that rain shadow.
Let's just ignore it because it has magical stuff going on there, anyways.
That's true. That is not by any means a normal con.
Let's just slap a crack and then talk about this crack.
Okay.
Let's just do a tiny one. We did a big one. Something like that. That doesn't look like a crack.
All right, let's not spend too much time on this one as opposed to the last one.
Okay. Let me just get this crack looking nice. There, how about that? Does that look all right?
So I think something interesting, and I don't know if I talked to you about this yet, but I think something interesting to do with one of these fissures is make it where a desert starts forming from one of them.
Okay.
But like it's not normal sand, like maybe this black sand
Black
is forming
sand.
from black sand, red sand, something unique, spice it up a bit.
All right.
Is forming from one of these fissures and creating a desert where there used to not be one, and like the kind of issues that would cause for a civilization. I don't know if you like the sound of it.
I like it. Something like this?
Oh yeah,
Just all the way around it.
yeah, and not that the people would know this, but eventually that would just grow.
Right.
Is kind of what I was thinking.
Does that mean like sand's just kind of pouring out of the fissure, or is like the area around it slowly turning to sand?
I think it'd be cooler if the area around it was slowly turning to sand. So like imagine you had your house on like the border of this and you watch every day as the sand comes closer and closer to your farmland.
Like if you go to a tree like somewhere right on this line here, and you just press on it real hard, it'll like crack and like sand will just start pouring out.
Yeah, it'd like crack and fall over, and like it probably wouldn't instantly be sand, but you would just see like it would be like decayed, but instead of rotting, it's turning into sand.
Right. We got the growing desert here.
Yeah. And dude, so many cool names come up with that.
Oh yeah, for sure. So we got the growing desert. Let's do something with this area.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with that.
I want to do something with each of these areas before we move on.
Okay.
Do you have anything more on the list to talk to us about, or did you cover it all?
Let me look. I believe most of what I have left is all about human interactions with geography.
All right, we'll save that for later.
Right.
Let's just talk about.
Haven't really made a lake. I mean, we made the river, but we never put a lake anywhere.
That's true.
So you could also make this, and this would be a lot of shifting, but you could turn this into an archipelago, because I noticed we didn't have one of those.
I'm unfamiliar with the term archipelago.
It's a bunch of small islands.
Oh, so what? Just so like start chopping things up in this area?
Oh yeah, just start chopping it up into a bunch of smaller islands.
Okay. Were these always here, or did these like break off?
You could put a fissure. I don't want to say put it wherever this is happening. I think put like a point off the coast of this continent, like a fissure growing off the coast of this continent, and then like somewhere in the back of this continent, if that makes sense. It's hard not being able to just like color the screen to show you exactly what I'm. Take out a huge chunk of where your cursor was at. Okay, go left.
Left.
Yeah, all the way to the border.
Border.
Yeah, right there. Just take out a huge chunk of the land there and then put a fissure there.
Oh, so you're saying like fill this area with fissure?
Well, you don't have to. You could use water and then just place a fissure later. But yeah, essentially, we'll say like a fissure made a whole bunch of water just flood through here.
Wait, so isn't that kind of like up here?
Yeah, but different. That other one made this weird magical lake that cut through a bunch of this. This make is suddenly making a giant deep ocean of it. But yeah, if you think that's too similar, we can try for something else.
I think it's too similar.
Okay.
We'll add the fissure here later. Let's just make some islands.
Okay. We can just make a bunch of archipelagos.
Archipelagos.
Actually, I don't know if that's a plural, because then that would be many groups of islands.
Archipelagus?
Yeah.
Darth Pelagus?
Darth Pelagus. Yes, he is the cause of this.
That's right. That looks pretty cool.
Yeah. I would keep it from connecting to the rest of the continent, if that makes sense.
What? So just like something like this?
Yeah, at the very least. Because otherwise it's not an archipelago. Those would just be peninsulas.
So I guess the key here for making islands is just to make sure it's not uniform. You know, you don't want to make a square island.
Right, yeah.
So I'm just kind of just drawing lines. All right. Look at that. Look at that. You see that? I'm excited.
Yeah, those are pretty cool.
Yeah. Let's take one last look at our world before we move on. That's beautiful. All right. Time for us to move on. What are some other places where people can learn about map building? Because obviously we're not the end-all be-all. We barely know what we're talking about.
That's true. There's this guy on YouTube called WazD20.
Okay.
He has, I think, like a playlist of 10 videos that's dedicated to map making, and he goes through how to build mountains, how to make rivers, how to make a whole bunch of stuff, how to place towns.
A bit more eloquently than what we just did.
Oh yeah, because he, I assume, writes a script and then just sits there and reads it for however many minutes, and he actually knows what he's talking about too. He even does one specific video that's like 10 rules for a fantasy map. If you go and watch, you'll see that most of the stuff that we talked about today, he mentions. Actually, he mentions even more that I don't think we even talked about.
Well, there you go. That's our recommendation for this episode. You watch anything good?
Yes, season 3 of Castlevania.
Is it good?
It is very good.
I saw season 1.
Well, you should watch season 2 and then season 3.
Okay. I remember I watched season 1 and I really enjoyed it. So I'm definitely going to have to check that out.
And again, we should also, just in case, let everyone know, Worldographer. That was what we were using today.
That's right. Today we were using Worldographer, and it was great. It was very intuitive.
And it's free. That's the best part.
Yeah, you can pay for it or you can get it for free, like we did. All right. I think that's pretty much it. How you can contact the show is that you can email us at alexsorangesoda.com up there on the screen. We're also working on... What are we working on? What are you working on?
We are working on making a Twitter that we'll be able to plug at the end of these.
That's right. And any questions, comments, concerns, ideas, or just general good vibes that you want to send to us, you can do it via our email or that Twitter that should be coming up here soon, Levi.
Oh, yes. Also, negative vibes. You can send those too.
Yeah. Send them directly to Levi's inbox.
I take the negative vibes. He takes the positive.
That's right. It's not because, I wanted to put all that negativity on him. It's just because I can't emotionally handle it.
Yeah, he starts crying.
That's right. Anyways, so that's our show. Have a nice day. Bye.